House joins us to give us the latest on what's happening in Austin with state legislators locked in a standoff. I'm Ernie Manouse.
And I'm Celeste Díaz Schurman. We'll also speak with Dr. Michael Chang, a pediatric infectious disease specialist at UTHealth Houston. We'll discuss what parents need to know about childhood immunizations and what's required for back to school.
Plus, Benise, the prince of the Spanish guitar, will join us to tell us all about his new show at Houston's Hobby Center this coming Friday night.
And as Ernie and I discuss the top headlines of the day, we want your thoughts, questions, and concerns. Give us a call or send us a text at 713-440-8870 or email us at talk@hellohouston.org.
Hello Houston is made possible in part by founding sponsors John Bradshaw and Kathy Sanders, and by gifts from listeners like you.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Lakshmi Singh. Declaring a public emergency in the nation's capital, President Trump says his administration is deploying 800 National Guard troops on the streets of the nation's capital, and he says he's putting his AG in charge of local police.
Today we're declaring public safety emergency in the District of Columbia, and Attorney General Pam Bondi, who's fantastic, is taking command of the Metropolitan Police Department as of this moment. And I'll be making the appropriate notifications to Congress and to the mayor.
Well, according to a White House staffer, Trump has now signed an executive order invoking his powers under Section 40 of the Home Rule Act to take control of the D.C. police. Trump says his government will get rid of people from underpasses and public spaces, but he did not provide details on how or where people would be moved. His actions come days after a former DOJ staffer and another person were the victims of an alleged attempted carjacking and assault. Trump asserts crime has spiked in D.C., but local police data on violent crime show a much different picture. NPR's Brian Mann has more on that and on the surge in federal law enforcement presence over the weekend.
Crime is down in Washington. Violent crime hit a 30-year low last year. That's according to the U.S. Justice Department. So there were tourists and locals out on a normal summer evening eating ice cream and street food. People I talked to seemed confused by the presence of so much federal law enforcement. And speaking yesterday on MSNBC, Washington, D.C.'s Mayor Muriel Bowser also questioned the president's motives for putting these federal agents on the streets.
Now, if the priority is to show force in an American city, we know he can do that here. But it won't be because there's a spike in crime.
NPR's Brian Mann reporting. The White House and the Kremlin are still working out the details of this week's summit between President Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin. They're scheduled to hold talks Friday in Alaska about ending Russia's war with Ukraine. NPR's Charles Means has more from Moscow.
It's unclear what concessions Putin will bring from across the Bering Strait. Publicly, the Russian leader insists peace hinges on an end to NATO expansion, Ukraine's disarmament, and ceding land claimed but not always controlled by Russian forces. Trump is on record saying a peace deal may involve a swapping of territories. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky is not expected to be part of Friday's talks. Meanwhile, a coalition of European leaders issued a weekend statement in support of Ukraine and rejecting any concessions negotiated behind Kiev's back. Charles Maines, NPR News, Moscow.
U.S. stocks are mixed this hour. The Dow is down 78 points at 44,097. The S&P's gained 7 points and the Nasdaq is up 59 points. From Washington, this is NPR News.
Live from News 88.7 in Houston, I'm Alexandra Hart. Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton has filed a lawsuit in California. He's asking a court to enforce arrest warrants that Texas Republicans issued for Democrats who fled the state over plans to redraw the state's political maps. Lawmakers are currently in the middle of a special legislative session. However, business is stalled in the House after over 50 Democrats fled the state. Paxton filed a similar lawsuit in Illinois where over 30 of the Democrats were staying. This latest petition in California names 6 House Democrats. The lawsuit was filed in a heavily pro-Trump county in Northern California. Meanwhile, hundreds of people showed up to a rally in Fort Worth on Saturday to support those Texas House Democrats who left the state. KERA's Pablo Arauz-Peña has more.
The proposed maps in Texas would potentially give Republicans 5 new congressional seats. Former U.S. Congressman Beto O'Rourke says Democrats nationwide shouldn't wait for the maps to be redrawn.
If we do not win a majority, then a Republican majority, Those quisling, corrupt cowards, they will roll out the red carpet for a third Trump term, and we cannot allow that to pass.
Attorney General Ken Paxton sued to block O'Rourke from raising funds for the Democratic representatives who fled the state. O'Rourke told the crowd that he has countersued. I'm Pablo Arauz Peña in Dallas.
A Houston area youth baseball team is off to Williamsport, Pennsylvania for the Little League World Series. Richmond's Lamar Little League team notched a 5-2 victory over a team from Louisiana to win the Southwest Region Championship last week. Coach Justin Pollard attributes the team's success to the fact that most of the boys have been playing on the same team for more than 4 years.
The way we play as a team, is just fun to watch. And these boys love each other, and they lean on each other. They rely on each other.
It's the 4th year in a row a Texas team has made it to the tournament. 3 of those have been from the Houston area. The series begins August 13th. I'm Alexandra Hart, News 88.7.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include ARM. On the latest episode of Tech Unheard, ARM CEO and host Renee Haas talks to musician and activist Peter Gabriel about how tech and AI are helping to shape the future in creativity and innovations.
Live from the University of Houston, it's Hello Houston, an open forum on today's biggest stories affecting Houston and beyond. Call now, 713-440-8870, or let us know your thoughts on today's topics by emailing us at talk@hellohouston.org. Now here's your host for Hello Houston, Ernie Manouse, Celeste Díaz Schurman, and Frank Billingsley.
Thanks for tuning in. Frank is actually out today.
But I'm back.
Yay! Ernie is back. And today is August 11th, and we hope you are having a great Monday so far.
I think everyone should be having a great Monday because it's a great day out there. We don't have Frank to tell us what the weather is, but walking out there, we did get a shower this morning. Came right through. I came out of my house, pulled my car out, and I saw the water. I was like, did someone pressure wash my driveway? I'm like, oh no, it rained.
No.
But it's a beautiful day, I hope.
It really is a beautiful day. But, I bet you Texas lawmakers are checking the weather, maybe checking their flights back. Do you think, Ernie, they'll be coming back anytime soon?
Really?
No? Okay.
I did hear an interesting thing, though, and we're going to dig deeper into this topic when we get into the show a little bit. But they were talking, and I'm trying to remember which particular lawmaker it was. It may have been even Gene Wu, was saying most of the Democratic lawmakers that are working in the State House have regular jobs. And so not only are they not collecting their money for being a state rep, which is next to nothing, they're going to not be able to get their salaries from their actual jobs. And so very quickly, financially, it's going to hurt a good number of them. A lot of them aren't heavily invested or well off, like maybe on the other side of the aisle, there's a higher percentage of that, he was saying. And so this could really start to affect these people, their lives, their families, very quickly if they don't come back. Because the question was posed, since the governor has said he can just keep calling these special sessions, and he will.
Yep.
The other side of that, though, is it will also hurt Republicans because they need to be in the chamber. So they're away, and they were already away for their regular session. So the fiscal part of it, like we often see, money matters, may be what brings this to a close. And as we'll talk with Brandon Rottinghouse in a little bit, they only need a few more Democrats to hit quorum. I think on Friday they only needed 5 more. And if they'd had them, then they could have moved forward.
Right. Which was very interesting because originally Speaker Burrows, I think when he counted in, there was it had gone up from 94 to 95. So one Democratic leader did show up, I believe, on Friday. And again, there's going to be a lot to discuss. And we are going to be speaking with UH professor and party politics host Brandon Rottinghouse in a few minutes about that. We're also, as we're gearing up for back to school, I know myself included, we're looking at checklists and we're thinking, what do we need to make sure we have all of our I's dotted and T's crossed? And coming up on Hello Houston, we are going to be joined by Dr. Michael Chang, a pediatric infectious disease specialist from UTHealth Houston, to talk about what parents need to know about childhood immunizations. And I know parents still have questions around that and what's required for back to school. And again, you can always join the conversation at 713-440-8870.
But I know what's really on your mind is, Ernie, what were you doing this weekend?
Ernie, what were you doing this weekend?
Funny you should ask, Celeste. I had a really rare, fun opportunity. They had a Dallas. We talked about this when we had Donna Mills on our show.
Mm-hmm.
They had a Dallas reunion in Dallas. It was like a fanfare for the TV show Dallas, but also for Knots Landing, and also for Three's Company.
Oh, that's so.
So
I
Joyce
love
DeWitt
Three's.
was there,
Yeah, I love Three's
and
Company.
Priscilla Barnes was there, and also Jenna Lee Harris, who actually was on Dallas, and I think that was the line over connection. But they brought together a huge number of the cast from Dallas, and then a couple from the other two shows. And it was really kind of wild. And I'll tell you, if you watched our Donna Mills interview, and it's available on YouTube, the full interview, and you look and you think, she looks really good. In person, she looks even better. She's 84 years old, which is just blows my mind.
Amazing.
And she looks like she did at the end of the run of Knots Landing 30-some-odd years ago. Just amazing.
She stays hydrated, I'm sure.
And sweet. They were so. I got to see Linda Gray. I'd interviewed Linda Gray years ago, Sue Ellen. And we chatted a little bit about that. And I told her just how much our crew and our staff remembered doing that interview and just how kind she was to everyone. And she started to cry.
Oh.
She was like, you don't know how much that touches me. And it really, you could tell it had an impact. So
love that.
That was fun.
That is so fun.
But,
and you know, for those who don't know this, we actually on the weekends play a best of. And I believe that Donna Mills interview that Ernie did will be on coming up one of these weekends. And you can catch those on Saturdays and Sundays. And those are put together by our executive producer, Jim Kovacic. So thanks for that. So if you ever tune in on Saturday or Sunday, you might hear a best of.
And we mentioned YouTube. You can watch us on YouTube right now. Go to our YouTube channel. Just go to YouTube and look for the Houston Public Media channel, or go to our webpage, hellohouston.org, and click that orange banner. But that's all of what we've been rambling about. Life goes on even when we're not involved with it. And boy, oh boy, the more things change, the more they stay the same. Start us off.
And Texas legislators remain in a standoff over a push to redraw the state's congressional districts or the district map. Mid-decade, a push coming from Republican lawmakers. We've been watching what's been going on in Austin. Texas Democratic leaders remain out of state with no end in sight as to when they will come back. This special session of the Texas legislature is limited to 30 days and will end no later than August 20th. And time is running out for election officials to prepare for next year's primary without major disruption. Planning for the March primary election is already underway, but election officials say this can't move forward without finalized maps. And the first key deadline mandated by the state is coming September 9th. Joining us now is a co-host of Houston Public Media's Party Politics and U of H political science professor, Brandon Rottinghouse. Brandon, welcome to Hello Houston.
Hey, thanks, Celeste. I am very jealous. I am a huge Dallas fan, so I know Ernie got to spend some time with its stars, so we'll do trivia next time, but I'm very excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, keep listening. Later in the hour, we may talk about some of the other celebrity encounters I had. It was really fun. But anyway, let's move on to those folks that are trying not to encounter the Texas Rangers as they are out. We were just talking, Celeste and I, about the financial situation and what this could incur on them. They are, of course, all getting a $500 a day fine for not being in session when session is going on. Then on Friday, there were some other moves when it came to finance about, I don't know if it was suspending their pay, but it was to get pay for their offices even. They had to show up in Austin to get the money. Help walk me through what happened on Friday.
Yeah, in effect, that's right. I mean, the members of the Democratic Party who've broken quorum have basically forfeited their very small salaries. Remember, this is a part-time legislature, so they're getting very small amounts of pay. The number that is more consequential for them and their staff is the number that's about the kind of creation of their office budgets. So that's something that the legislature, the leaders that are left in the Republican Party decided to take away from them. This is just another step towards trying to find a way to entice them to come back and kind of put the financial screws to them a little bit.
And the other part of that, Brandon, is that we are butting up to some major deadlines. I mean, what is a realistic outcome for Democratic legislators?
Yeah, you make a great point, Celeste. And I think your kind of calendar there is really accurate and problematic for everyone. That is that they've got to have these ballots printed. They have to be able to understand who's going to run where. That means they've got to really plan ahead. And we're already in that crunch time where they'd like to have those numbers and those people put in the right place. So they're still kind of in a limbo, and that's not a great place to be for election officials. But I think that's the issue that obviously is going to create the real pressure for the legislature to do something here. This could last for a very long time. I mean, you mentioned that Greg Abbott has indicated that he will call special session after special session to be able to draw this out. He's willing to fight the long battle here, and it sounds like they're willing to do it for years, which seems completely impractical. But it may very well come to that if there's no kind of political remedy to this.
And we've seen, the Governor Abbott, when he has an agenda that he wants to move forward, for example, school vouchers, he will do what needs to be done to make sure it happens. And the other side of that is Attorney General Ken Paxton on Friday has asked the Texas Supreme Court to expel 13 Democrats from the state house. And what I found interesting is he's specifically calling for the Democrats who fled to California. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, it's a great point. This is really the new battleground. Midterms are really a moment where the Republican Party and the incumbent party in this case is definitely not willing to take the losses that likely happened during the midterm. So they want to do what they can to try to prevent that. This whole enterprise is largely kind of created for that. But we're also talking about midterms in the context of people who may have political ambitions. Ken Paxton certainly among them. He wants to run in the primary against John Cornyn for U.S. Senate. That means that you're going to see the politics of this taken to the very, very bitter end. So that's really, I think, kind of where things stand. And the question for the Republicans is sort of how far they're willing to push this and what they can do to be able to entice the Democrats to come back. The lawsuits that are being filed right now are really just the kind of tip of the iceberg. We're going to see a lot more, I think, this week in terms of what the courts are willing to do. Number one, are they willing to be more forceful in terms of trying to escalate this and force the Democrats to come back home, either by letting them be arrested or having some other kind of mechanism where this happens? The other is just the nature of the money. So the courts have filed a temporary injunction allowing for not allowing for Beto O'Rourke's organization, Powered by People, to be able to pay some of the fees and fines for the members who are absent. That's a litigation that's going to continue this week, but that's a definite problem for Democrats who are going to have to pay a fair amount of money here to be able to make sure they keep the quorum break alive.
Take me into the Beto O'Rourke lawsuit here for the Power of the People. Are they going under the concept that it is bribery? And how do they get it to bribery if, in fact, the activity is already happening? They're not giving them money to do something, which is what bribery would be. It is an ongoing movement, and they are funding support of these legislators. How is Paxton's lawsuit working through that?
Yeah, it's a great question. It gets into the kind of legal fine print here. The bottom line is that the judge seemed to agree that these fines had to be paid for by the individuals themselves personally and not through some political action committee or some other kind of political means. So that's really the holdup here. And so if it's the case that the judge and the courts rule that this is a very kind of strict outcome, that is that the law specifically says that these members are forced to pay this out of their pocket, then it's going to be harder for other organizations to come to their aid. And that's the real kind of legal kind of core question that they're going to have to consider and to get to the heart of this week.
I'd love to dig into the weeds on that more, but I don't want to bore everyone with it. I want to go over to California. While everything was happening here on Friday in California, they were having a press conference, and Gavin Newsom's talked very strongly about how California could step in and fix what might go away here in Texas. My concern here, or desire to know more, is even if everything gets rectified in Texas, which I doubt it will, would California still move ahead now that we know the threat is out there? He kind of implied, they've already threatened it now, so we all have to start doing this. What's your understanding of where he stands, and what does that mean moving forward?
Yeah, and the stakes are really high here, right? I mean, Gavin Newsom obviously is discussed as a kind of possible presidential contender. Now we're in a moment in American politics where both bases are activated. They want to see action. And even people who aren't part of that base want to know that their leaders are fighting for them. So there's not much incentive here for Gavin Newsom, even if Texas resolves itself to back down on this. There are other states, like you mentioned, that are considering the same issue too. So obviously Illinois is one. The Democrats this week are meeting with some of the members of the Latino caucus in Illinois. And that means obviously that there's sort of some synergy and some allies that are kind of connected to the same issue. So this is definitely going to be something that doesn't stop just because Texas ends it. But what Texas Democrats are saying is that they think that this is really them at the tip of the spear. They don't want to back down, because if they do, then there's a sense that they're going to let the Republicans win or let Donald Trump win. So just as a kind of purely political question, they want to make sure that they hold the line here, because if they don't, then it's certainly going to be the case that other states are going to follow along. So where California will fall, if it's the case that Texas decides not to, we don't know. The implicit threat was because Texas was going to redistrict. Whether they'll pursue that or not, I don't know. A lot of states have kind of moved in the direction of having a more kind of common sense approach, that is, have a redistricting committee. And so what California is doing is not just to redistrict to help the Democrats, but also really undoing its own kind of good government mantra. So this is not a good situation for American politics. And obviously the implications are quite national.
Right. You're listening to Hello Houston. We are speaking to UH political science professor and party politics host, Brandon Rottinghouse. You can join the conversation at 713-440-8870. And we have been getting a couple of questions from our YouTube channel. My British computer guy wants to know, Brandon, if the representatives were to start GoFundMe accounts to help with the fines or lost income, or if they received money from a PAC, would that actually be considered bribery?
Yeah, it's a really good question. And this really is at the heart of what the Republicans are arguing, what Greg Abbott has implied. It's unclear, I think. I mean, the courts would have to decide if they think that constitutes bribery. It would be a pretty, I think, long stretch in order for local district attorneys to use that as a pretext to arrest and then indict people like this on a bribery charge. So I don't think that's going to move in that kind of direction. But I do think there's a real concern for Democrats, like I said, that if they're getting money from an external political source, it could be the courts look at this and say, that's not what the law says. It says specifically they have to pay for it. So exactly what this looks like and whether or not they can take kind of private money and have it into their own personal accounts and use it for their kind of own preferences is something we don't know yet. But that's what the courts are going to have to sort out.
And we have one more question from YouTube. Dark One would like to know, so if the representatives come back to Texas and get arrested, can they be forced to take their seats to make a quorum?
The short answer is yes. In fact, the courts have allowed this to happen. They have basically given the green light to the House of Representatives to police itself in any way they want. And what the leaders of the chamber have said is that they are going to use the Texas Department of Public Safety and the Rangers to be able to round up those members, bring them back. It's happened before in the 1970s. It was something that was almost a running joke. The killer bees had tried to kind of break quorum to prevent the opportunity for there to be legislation passed that benefited a conservative governor, and the Democrats and some others didn't like it. So there have been these moments before where we're seeing kind of the Rangers and other law enforcement agencies bring those members back and really kind of force them in the chamber. They'll lock the doors, they'll keep watch. So it definitely, if they're in the state of Texas, means that they're going to be rounded up and brought back to Austin.
And excuse me if you've already said this, but just to put a point on this, when we think about them being arrested, they're not being taken to jails and locked in cells. It's a different concept because it's within the state legislature and their concept of arresting and retaining them.
That's right. Yeah, there are no handcuffs involved. It's not going to be, behind iron bars, and they're going to be, kind of clinking tin cups against the bars. This is really more like we're just kind of escorting you back, which is really what the law says. So it doesn't, though, I think, kind of absolve the fact that this is escalating in a way that can't be undone. The politics of this create bad feelings and will continue to do so. We saw this in 2003. We saw it in 2021 in past quorum breaks. And so we're definitely going to see it again.
With the genie being out of the bottle in this whole thing, and we talked about it a little bit with Gavin Newsom, if this continues to spread across the country, and we see Pritzker in Illinois talking about it, we see Hochul in New York talking about how she'd have to do a couple-year program to get to where she would need to be to do this, is the genie out of the bottle? Is this now the new landscape? And if so, not to keep on this, but what puts the genie back in the bottle? How do we stop this now?
Yeah, that's a really, I think, important question and one that we don't know the answer to. If it's the case that the escalation by both parties continues and there's no abatement, then we won't see any real limitation here. And like I said, I think that erodes the quality of democracy. If we're just drawing seats to maximize political power, then effectively what's happening is that you're just seeing kind of the powerful win, and there's no ability for people who are in the minority or people who have different views to be able to challenge that. That means representation takes a serious hit and has consequences for the way that the country's governed. So there are a lot of negative things that could happen if this pursues and consists down this road. But, that's obviously something we don't know the answer to. You either have to have some of these members say enough is enough, or you might have to have Congress basically say, we're going to pass a law that says no redistricting mid-decade. It's already contentious as it is. Even Republicans look at this and say they don't want to do it. So there's definitely some room there to roam. Now, the question is whether Donald Trump would sign such a law. We don't know. A lot of speculation here about what's going to happen, but I do think that, to answer your question, that we're not sure, and I think that the consequences of it though are very, very serious.
Speaking of consequences, can an elected official be removed from office by the state? Because I understand Governor Abbott has called for, I believe, Gene Wu to be removed from his seat.
Right.
Yeah, they would have to have the court's permission to declare the seat to be vacant. And the courts have not been willing to do that. They've been pretty reluctant to get involved in the affairs of other institutions. In fact, they've specifically said that they think that this is something that the legislature needs to do on its own. And they sort of have. Like we said, some of the fines that are in place really do kind of allow them to police themselves. The courts also have been really clear about what they think constitutes kind of the ability to continue in office. And they argue that there are some constitutional limits, that is death and inability to operate through some kind of illness or other kinds of impairment. So those are the really kind of key factors that include what constitutes a inability to pursue or continue in office. So I don't think that the courts would agree, but they might. We're in a very partisan period. These are partisan courts, so there's some chance that they might change their mind.
Let me put a button on what Celeste was just asking you too, that and my understanding too, where you went with it, well, the legislature would have to decide whether or not. But because they don't have a quorum, even about changing timelines for maps and voting and all of that, you can't do it without a quorum. So as long as the quorum stays, as long as they don't have quorum, nothing can move forward. So any threats, anything decided, any plans to alter it by moving dates, so nothing can happen.
Nothing can happen. I mean, they can have hearings and they can definitely talk and sort of put some political pressure on these members, but that's about the best they can do right now. Yeah, but I do think we're going to see some changes. Honestly, this could be the very last quorum break that the state ever has, because the legislature is going to put some very harsh rules on quorum breakers once they get back and have a quorum. So this could very well be the last time this happens. And that's, I think, why you see Greg Abbott and Ken Paxton and Democratic leaders escalating this so much, because the stakes are really high. This is the last moment they can probably use this as a real valid kind of ability to slow things down.
Brandon Rottinghouse is the co-host of Houston Public Media's Party Politics and U of H political science professor. Brandon, thanks for joining us today.
Hey, thanks, Celeste. Thanks, Ernie.
Bye.
Coming up on Hello Houston, we're joined by Dr. Michael Chang, a pediatric infectious disease specialist at UTHealth Houston, to talk about what parents need to know about childhood immunizations and what's required for back to school. This is News 88.7.
Hello, I'm Josh Adams, General Manager of Houston Public Media. This station just lost $2.2 million in federal support annually. To keep our station strong, we've launched the Resiliency Fund, powered by community members just like you. Your support will help bridge the funding gap and ensure these programs remain free and accessible to everyone. If public media and this station matter to you, now is the time to act. Support the Resiliency Fund today at houstonpublicmedia.org/donate.
You can hear it this afternoon at 3 o'clock.
If you're feeling frustrated and unsure of what to do right now, start here.
Support Houston Public Media's Resiliency Fund. Your support will bridge the $2.2 million annual gap left from federal funding cuts.
Giving to our Resiliency Fund means you're protecting the truth. You're making sure people stay informed.
You can do something. Give to the Resiliency Fund at houstonpublicmedia.org/donate.
Or call 888-909-0887.
So here we are in the month of August, and we now have, in large part, a framework for what the tariff rates are going to be. And the president to some degree, at least isn't totally chickening out. And now, if you are a U.S. company that is importing goods into the United States, you are writing a check to Uncle Sam.
I'm Natalie Kitroeff. That's Today on the Daily from the New York Times.
It's on tonight at 7 o'clock.
Support comes from GenPro, a Houston-based home generator service providing power to homes during unexpected outages, helping with connectivity and productivity. More information is available at genpro.com.
Support for Houston Public Media comes from Decamera. The 25-26 season features a Schubert Perspectives series, jazz with Branford Marsalis and Pat Metheny, and much more. Information and tickets at decamera.com.
And now back to Hello Houston. To comment on today's topics, call or text 713-440-8870 or email us at talk@hellohouston.org. Now here's Celeste Díaz Schurman and Ernie Manouse.
As the new school year approaches, it's more important than ever to make sure kids are protected against preventable diseases. August also marks International Immunization Awareness Month, a time where we spotlight the vital role vaccines play in keeping our communities, especially our young children, healthy and safe. From measles to meningitis, vaccines are a key part of preventing serious illnesses, starting from infancy and continuing through adulthood. And today we're joined by Dr. Michael Chang, a pediatric infectious disease specialist at UTHealth Houston, to talk to us about what parents need to know about childhood immunizations, what's required for back to school, and why timely vaccination matters today really more than ever. Dr. Chang, good morning and welcome to Hello Houston.
Good morning. It's nice to be here.
It's good to have you with us. If you would like to join the conversation, you have questions for the good doctor, give us a call or text 713-440-8870. I guess the place to start, we had a guest on recently also talking about vaccines and made the point that really what parents need to do has not changed. There's been a lot of news, there's been a lot of talk, there's been a lot of chatter, but at the end of the day, they still need to get the same vaccines.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So vaccines still remain the most effective method to protect our kids from preventable illnesses and really help them have the best outcome possible. And so, like you said, despite all the news and a lot of media attention about vaccines and the ACIP, or the Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices for the CDC meeting in June, really nothing's changed. The recommendations from the ACIP in June maintain the exact same childhood immunization schedule. And so the immunization schedule today is the same as the prior immunization schedule for childhood vaccines.
So if you're a parent and your children are either starting school for the first time, so the kindergartners and up, or if you're coming back to school, what do you have to have in place? And of course, always when we have these conversations, we want to say, always check with your healthcare provider. They know your child, yourself better than we do here. We're talking generally, but.
Right. And so essentially you need to have all your standard childhood immunizations. So those including against like tetanus, diphtheria, and then pneumococcal vaccines, hepatitis B. So there's a list of the childhood immunizations required in the state. Usually it's posted on the Texas Department of Health website. And so parents can go to the Texas DSHS and look up the required immunizations for their child before starting school. Obviously, talk to your primary care provider or your healthcare provider and discuss with them. And then also the CDC, has their recommendations for the childhood immunizations. The state ones at this point still align with the CDC recommendations, so I think those are good resources. The other option is parents can download the CDC vaccine app. That
everyone's got an app.
And it's actually super helpful. I refer to it all the time still because, there's like catch-up schedules and everything. And it's actually super easy to use. And so you can go to whatever app store that you use and download the CDC vaccine app, and you'll get a full list of what you need to do before your kids start school.
And, Dr. Chang, as a pediatrician, you see children and you see parents, consistently. What are some of the questions that parents are asking when taking their kids in for vaccines?
Yeah, I think the main concern is always about side effects and like potential consequences of vaccines, right? And I think the key to remember is that, vaccines for kids are some of the most widely administered medications in the entire world, right? And so the history of vaccines is not new. Like other than COVID vaccine coming out in the last several years, the childhood immunizations that we've been dealing with have decades and decades of data and evidence behind them. And so, but the biggest concern is always going to be about side effects and potential long-term consequences. Again, the long-term consequence is that your child is protected against preventable illnesses and again, hopefully it has their best health outcomes possible.
You mentioned the COVID vaccines, and do you think that parents sometimes that potentially are hesitant about vaccinating their child is because they are thinking that, there's this new technology? Or talk to us a little bit about that hesitancy there that you see.
Yeah, great. I'm so glad you asked this question, actually, because this is something I've been wanting to talk to parents about or kind of have a kind of platform to discuss, which is that not all vaccines are the same, right? So just like every type of infection can be caused by either bacteria or virus or even fungal infections, there's different vaccines that are created through different technologies for different pathogens. So different infections and different vaccines. So not all vaccines work exactly the same. So for example, tetanus vaccine is based on a toxoid or a weakened version of the tetanus toxin, whereas pneumococcal vaccine is based on proteins of the bacteria. And so you can't lump all vaccines together into kind of the same category. Yes, they're all vaccinations, but they're not all the same. Or even one nirsevimab vaccine for RSV, that's actually a monoclonal antibody that we're classifying as a vaccine. And so I understand parents want to have the most information available about vaccines, which I think is appropriate, but also they should, make sure that they understand that what their concerns are specifically. And then for mRNA vaccines in particular, they're not particularly new. They had some research time before the COVID vaccine even rolled out, and mRNA vaccines are not just for infections either, right? And so they're being developed for cancer and for other conditions. So I understand parents want the full information, and I think that's appropriate. And I think they should go and find all the information and then understand that different vaccines work differently and that the concerns they may have about one don't necessarily apply to all the vaccines together.
Right. And when we're looking at, I think that they're normally called like the back to school vaccines. What happens, who is basically most susceptible of illness if you decide, I don't want to vaccinate my child? Like what kind of implications does that have to the school?
Right. And so, one of the benefits of vaccine is that it helps protect people who either can't be vaccinated or are at higher risk of infection, right? And so by reducing the likelihood that I'm going to have a severe infection or my child has a severe infection, I'm reducing, hopefully, the probability that they spread it to somebody else, right? And so that's one of the ideas kind of as a social contract, right? Essentially where I am taking on this vaccine, which is going to cause me some pain from the shot, but other than that is providing me protection, my kids protection, and then hopefully protecting others. And so those patients, there are immunocompromised patients who, either can't get certain vaccines, like patients with suppressed immune systems are not necessarily recommended to get a live virus vaccine like chickenpox or shingles. And so, by doing our parts, we can protect everybody in the community.
We're speaking with UTHealth's Dr. Michael Chang about immunization and vaccines. If you'd like to join the conversation, give us a call or text 713-440-8870. I know it's a little off topic, but I want to go there for just a second. You talk about, the hurt, the pain, and getting a needle in the arm. Boy, oh boy, those COVID vaccines, they didn't really hurt. Those are really great needles. Why don't we have that for all these vaccines?
So it's a great question. Again, because not all vaccines are the same. They're not all made up of the same components. Different vaccines need different carriers or different solutions to put them in that they can be more effectively delivered. Different vaccines need to have kind of a different half-life in your muscle and things like that. So you have to use slightly different components for each different type of vaccine. And so ultimately, not everything can be so straightforward.
You were talking about the importance of everyone getting a vaccine because those that can't get vaccines, you're fixing the herd. You're kind of cleaning things up out there. From a medical point of view, looking at current trends and concern about people fearful of getting vaccines, what do you project then out could happen 5-10 years down the road?
Yeah, unfortunately, we are seeing a reduced uptake of vaccines in general, especially in kindergartners and school entry. And so year after year, we've seen reduced uptake in the school entry. And so, ultimately, I think Texas had a first-hand kind of experience with the measles outbreak earlier this year. And that's what we potentially could see, which is that you have previously vaccine, almost eradicated diseases that even I, as a pediatric infectious disease specialist, hardly thought about. And now we're seeing them recur, right? So like for measles, for example, it's one of the most contagious viruses that we know of, and you really need to have at least 90% or higher vaccine uptake to protect from outbreaks. And so as we see those numbers fall, what we're going to expect is more outbreaks of vaccine-preventable illnesses. And that's unfortunate because, that impact is beyond just the child getting sick, which is horrible already, but also, time off from work, time missed from school. There's all these other impacts of having outbreaks that could impact the school district or, your child's learning experience. That could have been prevented by just making sure that they had their immunizations up to date.
And it's interesting, right? Because we're talking about the implications that these type of vaccines can help for preventable diseases. But, I have 2 young children, and a few years ago, my mom was diagnosed with breast cancer. She is, thank goodness, okay. But during that time when she was going through care, she moved in with us and she became immune compromised. And to me, it became very clear to me because I had never experienced that. My kids are healthy. We're healthy. We're, young. Mm-hmm. And I realized how important it is for when you send your child to school and then they go home and they have family members that they might look healthy, but they might be at home with somebody who's immune compromised. Talk to us a little bit about how that also affects older family members.
Yeah, absolutely. And so as we're talking about childhood vaccinations, it's also a good time to remind adults they need vaccines too. And so certainly those over 65 and some patients over age 50 do need to catch up on their vaccines and make sure they're up to date. And so that's a good opportunity to remind people about that. But no, absolutely. So again, the point of vaccinations is to protect our families with the best tools that we have available. Mm-hmm. And that includes, our direct vaccine recipients, our kids, ourselves, but also, again, those people in our families that who cannot necessarily get vaccinated, or even with vaccine may be at increased risk of developing severe disease. And so anything we can do to try to minimize that risk for our families, that's all we want, right? We want the best outcomes for our kids, our families, everyone that we love, right? And so, again, vaccines provide that tool and one of the most effective tools and safest tools that we have to do that. So, yeah, I think it's important for parents that are considering vaccinating their child and having questions about that, which, again, totally support being, fully informed. But they need to think about, again, it's a societal contract, essentially, right? Not only am I protecting myself, but there's this potential benefit for others around me.
I'm learning that the healthiest person in my household is my 90-year-old mother. She doesn't seem to get sick from any of this stuff. I get it. I got COVID. I get the flu. She gets it. No signs. Yeah. She's doing great. But going back. Great. Yeah, I know. I'm very lucky. Yeah. Hopefully I've got those genes when I get older. Going back to needles, because I'm kind of obsessed there. And Fritz on YouTube is also obsessed about this. He wants to know, what about the new needleless injection technology?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think there are needleless injections that are available for other medications, and they tend to use like a puff of air or some sort of compressed air to deliver the medication under the skin. And they are used for different things. I'll be perfectly honest, I'm not involved with any vaccine development with any manufacturers or anything, so I don't know what's in the pipeline for needleless injectors for vaccination specifically.
Interesting.
Right. I know we've asked this, and I know you've addressed it, and I know it's important that we do it again because I know the response we're going to get from this interview is people still concerned about the safety of vaccines. So as parents are getting their young ones ready for school,
yeah. And we're specifically talking about back to school vaccines.
Right. Yeah. And so, I think, again, for back to school vaccines, if we want to exclude COVID vaccine, which is this quote unquote new kid on the block, which is now 4 years old too, right? But like
the controversial kid on the block. Yeah.
But if we exclude those, if we look at chickenpox, look at measles, look at pneumococcal for bacterial meningitis, bacterial pneumonia, different kinds of bacterial pneumonias, the rotavirus vaccine for diarrhea, all of those childhood immunizations have decades of information behind them. Measles is one of the oldest vaccines that we deliver, essentially unchanged for decades. Hundreds of millions of doses administered globally. And again, these are medications that are widely used all over the world, right? And it's one thing if you say, okay, in the United States, we have this experience, but globally, there's been no safety signals, for these childhood immunizations, right? And in fact, they are life-saving. And so, I think I totally support parents wanting to be fully informed about their child's health, right? Like, again, very reasonable to do. But I think when you take the totality of the information that's available for these immunizations, again, one of the most widely administered types of medications given around the world, no safety signal across multiple countries all across the globe. And will, an individual child have some pain from the injection? Sure. But at the same time, there's just not been a clear safety signal for the back-to-school immunizations. And I'll add, not for COVID either. There were, for young adult males, there was a concern about myocarditis, et cetera. But for the childhood immunizations that we're talking about going back to school, there's not been a universally identified safety signal for any of them.
Thank you,
Excellent.
Doctor.
Dr. Michael Chang is a pediatric infectious disease specialist at UTHealth Houston. Dr. Chang, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
And coming up, we'll talk to Roni Benise. Stay with us as Hello Houston continues.
With federal support gone, Houston Public Media needs a stronger foundation for the future. The Houston Public Media Resiliency Fund is our response to ensure this service remains strong, stable, and community-powered. Your gift today helps us stay on the air tomorrow and the day after that. Give now to the Resiliency Fund at houstonpublicmedia.org/donate or call 800-364-8300.
The Arts Hour, Friday nights at 9 on News 88.7.
Hi, this is Matt Harrop. There's been a lot of news to cover in Houston over the last few months. Keep listening to Houston Public Media for the latest, and if you've got a car, truck, boat, or RV you don't need anymore, donate it to the station. It could be worth hundreds of dollars in support. The donation process is easy for you, and we'll pick up your vehicle in any condition. Here's how to get started. Go to houstonpublicmedia.org/cars to learn more. Thank you.
Support comes from SunnyPro, a Houston-based business advisory firm providing tailored consulting solutions, specializing in technology assessments, cybersecurity, AI strategy, and more. Details at sunnypro.com or follow @SunnyPro LLC. Support comes from the Eternal Gandhi Museum Houston, highlighting the power of nonviolent conflict resolution through examples of peace leaders worldwide. Now open. Field trips and group visits available. More at egmh.org. Support comes from the Elizabeth D. Rockwell Center, presenting Rebooting Our Relationship with Tech, a lecture series at the University of Houston, exploring the intersection of technology, society, and democracy. More at uh.edu/hobby. Support for Houston Public Media comes from Central Market's 30th Annual Hatch Chili Fest, featuring hundreds of Hatch pepper products and Hall of Flame flavors, marking 30 years of roasting with fire, August 6th through 19th. More at centralmarket.com.
And now back to Hello Houston. To comment on today's topics, call or text 713-440-8870 or email us at talk@hellohouston.org. Now here's Celeste Díaz Schurman and Ernie Manouse.
Roni Benise, the prince of the Spanish guitar, began busking on the streets of LA and at flea markets and neighborhood theaters, garnering attention with his unique fusion of Latin rhythms like flamenco, salsa, tango, and samba with rock music to create his unique sound. And people took notice, including PBS. which produced his first television special, the Emmy-winning Nights of Fire. Many more specials, tours, and recordings followed, creating the performance artist we know today simply as Benise, who is bringing his all-new show, Benise, 25 Years of Passion, to Houston's Hobby Center this Friday night, August 15th. So it's my pleasure to welcome back to our airwaves someone who's become a friend of mine over the years, I like to think. Benise, hello there, sir.
Hi, Ernie. I think you need to do all my promos.
Oh, well,
the way you say Benise is perfect. I love it.
Well, I try. Benise, 25 years of passion. How has it been 25 years?
I know. It's unbelievable. PBS came on board like over 20 years ago. And before that, we were busking on the streets for 4 or 5 years, and it's flown by. But it's been great. And what's really amazing is I have some of my same dancers and band with me from over 20 years ago.
I read somewhere they describe your shows as a combination of a guitar river dance mixed in with Cirque du Soleil.
Yeah, we.
There's a lot going on in one of your performances.
There's a lot going on. And I remember meeting with managers around LA when I first started, and a lot of them wanted to downsize the show. And there was only one that said, let's make it bigger. That was Dr. McGee, who also managed KISS. I was like, okay, this is the guy I'm going with. We're going to make this even bigger than I could imagine. So yeah, there's all sorts of elements, of course, different dance styles. And that's why it's so much fun for us and for the fans.
And what can the fans expect from Benise 25 Years of Passion that will be playing this Friday?
Well, we have some new songs. Of course, we're bringing out some old songs from over the last 25 years. If you like salsa, we've got some great Cuban numbers. If you like flamenco, fusion, we've got some amazing dancers from Spain and from around the world. We have a big Brazilian carnival number. And, of course, if you like Spanish guitar, we've got Spanish guitar. And we combine some classic rock with classical music. So there's Vivaldi mixed in, there's Led Zeppelin, there's AC/DC, Beethoven. Like I said, it's a little bit of something for everyone.
Wow, so you really have shattered the mold, of Spanish guitar, what people think of that traditional, just seeing somebody playing on, the stoop. That's very exciting.
It is. I grew up playing classic rock, so that's why I brought that influence. I discovered Spanish guitar one day. I just fell in love with it. So I kind of created a niche combining both worlds together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's so cool and exciting to see what you bring to the stage and what you do. But also I'm curious, a little side note here. I love Liza Minnelli. I love live performances of hers. And I just do not like studio recordings. They lose that excitement and flair of what you get in a live performance. You somehow have found a way to bring that excitement and thrill of the live performance into your recordings. What's the secret to doing that, to keeping that level of energy and excitement when recording?
It's a great question. And it's a fine balance, but you want to capture that energy, and a lot of my solos are maybe the first take. I found through trial and error, like the first time you do something, you're not thinking, you're just doing it. And then after that, you start thinking, and you lose that spark.
Yeah.
So we try to capture the first or second take. It may not be perfect, but like you said, you can kind of feel the energy coming through better.
Yeah, and not just thinking it, you overthink it, I think, is often the problem. And you start overanalyzing. And part of the beauty of what happens in a live performance is it's in the moment.
Exactly. And we live to perform, because there's nothing. I love to record and create, but when you're on stage, getting the energy from the audience, and every night, obviously, it's different. And this is probably our fifth time coming back to Houston.
Mm-hmm.
And we just have such great fans there. It's so much fun. It's such a great energy when we come to Houston.
And you've been performing for, quite a while. And how do you, when you are in a live performance, how do you stay fresh? And where do you find that inspiration?
How is it? Oh, not that song again.
Well, after 25 years, we have a lot of material. I think I have 17 albums, 8 PBS specials. So, we always keep it fresh. Like this show, we're probably bringing back 4 different dance numbers we haven't done in a while. We've got some new material and then some fan favorites that, we love to perform every night. So it always keeps it fresh. We keep changing it up.
Mm-hmm. You use the word passion in the title of this show. How do you define passion?
I think, like I said, it's more of that spark inside. You find what sparks you, what makes you feel alive, what makes you want to get up every morning and go for it. And for me, that's just creating and trying to find new songs for the show. It's 25 years, but I'm still writing new music and so excited about performing it for people.
Yeah. With the title having 25 years in it, it makes me feel as though you are sharing like a greatest hits tour in some way. And I'm curious, so then after a tour like this, then in some ways do you start from scratch again? Do you get to start and reinvent for the next 25 years? Do you continue on exactly in the same path? What's your mindset when this wraps?
I'm actually writing new material right now for next year. So I'm excited about that.
Yeah.
Brand new album, new stuff for PBS. So that's what keeps it fresh for me. I love writing and creating for the stage, new dance numbers, new multimedia. It's fun to create these different songs.
Yeah. When you talk about passion also, and I'm going to take a little of your personal life that maybe people, or maybe you're going to be like, Ernie, why did you mention that? You're with your family on vacation right now. Where do you keep the energy going? You're doing this on a day off, but you're on a tour.
Well, we go out on the weekends. I'm very fortunate. I book all my own venues. We rent out the venues, so I set my own schedule. So I usually book all the concerts on the weekend, and I come home to Southern California during the week to be with my family. This weekend, I had a weekend off. So it was great. My kids start school in about a week. So, you take it where you can get it.
You mentioned that you set your own schedule. How involved are you in the creative process when it comes to the choreography, when it comes to the lighting, when it comes to the holistic approach to the show?
Well, I really manage the whole aspect, even the production to the lighting. Through the years, I've worked with such great producers and directors. I've been able to, get little bits of information from all of them. And so now I manage the whole show and, costumes, choreography. We sit down with my dance captain and we go over things and we come up with, some new choreography. I'll research, different songs, different cultures, and then we'll get costumes depending on that and what the song calls for. So it's a lot of fun putting these together. It takes a while, but it's a lot of fun.
So it's truly your vision.
Yeah. Speaking of your vision, you're not watching us on YouTube right now. If you did, you will see that my hair has gotten rather long, nowhere near as long as yours. But I do need to know hair care tips. How do you keep it so luxurious? Mine's a dried out mess on my head right now.
Ernie, I've got to check you out. That's great.
No, it's nowhere near the luxurious locks you have going. I kind of look like a fright show. But what I'm looking forward to is the opportunity to get to see you this Friday night. I'm going to come out and see you, and I'm going to say hi. It's been a little clip since we've been together in person, so I look forward to it.
Absolutely. I believe the show is basically sold out, but yes, there's still some single tickets available.
Whoa. Are you saying that because you're like, well, Ernie, I don't know if I can get you in?
No, Ernie, you have to be on stage with us. We will find a place for you if it's on the side of the stage. Absolutely.
Oh, thank you, Ronnie, so much for giving us the call. Benise is going to be here in Houston Friday night. If you're interested, please check out at the Hobby Center and see if there's anything left that maybe you can grab a ticket or two. And thank you. Thank you so much for chatting with us today.
Thank you both. Thank you.
Coming up on Hello Houston, we'll continue diving into the top stories of the day. Stay with us for the second hour of Hello Houston.
Stay tuned. There's more Hello Houston on the way with Ernie Manouse, Celeste Díaz Schurman, and Frank Billingsley. For the latest in local news, subscribe to the Hello Houston daily newsletter at houstonpublicmedia.org. Hello Houston is a production of Houston Public Media. The opinions expressed by the guests of this program are solely their own and do not represent the views of management, staff, or underwriters of Houston Public Media. This is News 88.7.
Support comes from Artec House with Rolling Stone Presents Amplified, the immersive rock experience, highlighting the history of rock and roll and featuring over 300 artists whose music changed the world. Tickets at artechhouse.com.
For this afternoon, looks like a chance of showers mainly after 1 o'clock today. Currently, it's 88. Your NPR station, KUHF Houston, News 88.7, a service of the University of Houston.
Just ahead on this hour of Hello Houston, State Senator Molly Cook of Houston will join us to discuss the latest on what's happening with the Texas legislature. I'm Ernie Manouse.
And I'm Celeste Díaz Schurman. We'll also talk with Friends of Columbia TAPS Ed Pettitt and Claudia Corletto about a possible e-scooter ban in downtown Houston.
We'll also discuss a recent study from Rice University's Baker Institute that found that the use of illicit drugs among HISD high school students has increased while alcohol use has decreased.
And we want to hear from you, so give us a call or send us a text at 713-440-8870 or email us at talk@hellohouston.org. You can also watch us on our YouTube channel. Just go to hellohouston.org and click the big orange banner.
Hello Houston is made possible in part by founding sponsors John Bradshaw and Kathy Sanders, and by gifts from listeners like you.
Live from NPR News, I'm Lakshmi Singh. The Trump administration says it plans to deploy hundreds of National Guard troops on the streets of the nation's capital. President Trump says he is putting Attorney General Pam Bondi in charge of local police. Bondi echoed Trump's claim that crime in the city is surging.
No more crime rampant in our beautiful capital. No more teenage girls beating a disabled man to death. No more of that. No more drive-bys. We're going to do everything we can.
However, local police data show a 26% decline in violent crimes last year in the District of Columbia. D.C. City Council member Brooke Pinto says what President Trump's pursuing won't help improve public safety, but other federal options could.
We have judicial vacancies that the Senate is responsible for confirming judges on our local courts that have sat vacant for years. We have a declination rate at the U.S. Attorney's Office that is still too high. We need the federal government to step up their support with their supervision agencies. And we need Congress to fix the $1 billion gap they left in our local budget so we can pay our police and firefighters.
D.C. Councilmember Pinto speaking with NPR's Morning Edition. Today, President Trump described his upcoming meeting with Russian President Vladimir Putin as a feel-out meeting and said he would speak to European leaders and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky immediately afterward. He said Zelensky and Putin could meet together at some point afterward and said he would be open to joining them if needed. Trump and Putin are scheduled to hold a summit Friday in Alaska on ending Russia's war with Ukraine. Israelis against the war in Gaza have been ramping up protests as Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu defends his escalation of the war. NPR's Emily Fang visited near Israel's border with Gaza and spoke with Israelis who support him.
This viewing hill in southern Israel is so close. I can see the ruined concrete edge of Gaza. A few dozen tourists and Israelis have come here to peer into what remains of Gaza after 22 months of war. 28-year-old Israel Teberg is taking a break from his yeshiva or religious school nearby, and he says the Israeli military's bombing in Gaza is so loud it sometimes shakes his family's house. But he says he doesn't care because hostages kidnapped by Hamas are still being held in Gaza. As he leaves, a group of French tourists link arms and sing a Passover song describing overcoming persecution. Behind them, the sound of explosions and a black puff of smoke emerges over Gaza. Emily Fang, NPR News, Sderot, Israel.
This is NPR.
Live from News 88.7 in Houston, I'm Alexandra Hart. It's week 2 in the quorum break at the Texas House of Representatives. Speaker Dustin Burrows will try to resume House business again this afternoon after failing to have enough members to show up over the weekend.
The House will come to order. It is evident to the chair that a quorum is not present. Without objection, the House stands adjourned until 1 p.m. Monday.
The current session expires next week, but Governor Abbott told Fox News to expect more to come.
This could literally last years because in Texas, I'm authorized to call a special session every 30 days. It lasts 30 days. And as soon as this one is over, I'm going to call another one, then another one, then another one, then another one.
The congressional redistricting fight in Texas has touched off a wave of similar action in both blue and red states across the country. Some Houston ISD students will have a new option this school year for traveling to and from their campuses. News 88.7's Kyle McClinigan reports.
Houston ISD and Houston Metro have finalized an agreement that'll give eligible high school students a Metro card at the district's expense to use as an alternative to HISD's own bus service. Houston ISD's Chief of Organizational Effectiveness, Kari Feinberg.
We know that in HISD, a lot of students are already utilizing the Metro bus and light rail service to get to school, and that made us think whether there was an opportunity through a formal partnership to better support those students, but also to support some of the students who are traditionally using our yellow bus service.
HISD declined to say how much the district has budgeted for the program. Parents can see if their child is eligible via the HISD website. I'm Kyle McClinigan, News 88.7.
The National Hurricane Center has its eyes on a newly formed tropical storm that could develop into the first hurricane of the Atlantic season. Tropical storm Erin is currently located just west of the Cabo Verde Islands off the coast of West Africa. It's still too far out to know where it will go or what it will do, but officials are reminding you to have an emergency plan. I'm Alexandra Hart, News 88.7.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Progressive. Progressive Commercial Insurance protects small businesses from retailers to tradespeople. Progressive covers a variety of business needs with a range of coverages. More at progressivecommercial.com.
Live from Houston Public Media and News 88.7, it's Hello Houston, an open forum on today's biggest stories affecting Houston and beyond. Call now, 713-440-8870, or let us know your thoughts on today's topics by emailing us at talk@hellohouston.org. And now here's your host for Hello Houston, Ernie Manouse, Celeste Díaz Schurman, and Frank Billingsley.
Well, and we're back. Okay, date?
August 11th, the one day before HISD heads back to school tomorrow.
Why on a Tuesday?
First day of school. I'm not actually sure. I think, last week we had Meet the Teacher, which was...
Did you meet your teachers?
I did. She has 3 teachers, and they are all absolutely fabulous educators. And I think this is going to be a great year. We're going into 4th grade. Ooh. And this year they have 3, Evelyn will have 3 different teachers. And we are very excited, and we're very proud of our HISD elementary school. I know HISD gets a lot of bad rap, but it's excellent.
So you're excited.
Excellent school.
Send them into good hands.
Absolutely.
Fully vaccinated. So they're ready for what they need to go to school.
I have all the faith in our educators. And again, all the educators, whether you're in private school or public school, we know that everybody, teachers and administrators, even though we say they're gearing back to go, they've been working all summer.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
They've been working all summer and they've been in there, but we appreciate the work of our educators as they bring up the next generation of young minds.
Hopefully they'll be better than our minds. Hopefully
Please.
They'll fix it for us.
Please. Yes.
We want to let you know as the show goes on, you could always watch us and join the conversation over on YouTube, go to our YouTube channel. It's Houston Public Media's channel on YouTube. Or you can just go to hellohouston.org and click that big orange banner, and it'll take you over to us and watch us. You can also email us, talk@hellohouston.org. You heard all of that in the intro, so I don't need to say it again. I do need to say like, subscribe, and ring that bell. Mm-hmm. We got a lot more coming up on today's show. We're going to be talking about the e-scooters in downtown Houston, what that means for people.
New interesting developments.
But we always like to start off with the news of the day, and we're still on that story, and we are committed to staying on it. Celeste, what is that story?
As we continue our news coverage of the Texas legislative special session, a Tarrant County judge has blocked former U.S. Rep. Beto O'Rourke from financially contributing to Texas Democrats who fled the state to prevent the passage of new congressional map. That decision came as Attorney General Ken Paxton escalates the state's response to a Democratic walkout by petitioning to have 13 lawmakers removed from office for their role in stalling the Republican-led redistricting plan. Joining us now is State Senator Molly Cook of Houston. Senator Cook, welcome back to Hello Houston.
Thank you so much. Glad to be here.
You know, if folks want to join into the conversation, you can give us a call at 713-440-8870. In what Celeste just was saying, I'm curious if your understanding of how a court can remove 13 lawmakers from their position.
So I mentioned the other day on social media, I think we're all getting pretty sick of the term unprecedented. But
yes,
some of this is pretty unprecedented. And
right.
So, foundational to our government is 3 different branches that are co-equal. And we're talking about one branch being able to remove members of another branch. So highly concerning. I think what's really interesting to mention too, just right off the bat, there was a poll released this morning that showed that 72% of the midterm electorate is watching the special session. All eyes in Texas are looking at the choices that Republican state leadership are making and the fight that our Democratic colleagues are putting up. So I just want to highlight how important all of this is and how much attention all of our voters are paying to what's going on.
And Senator Cook, this is something that I've continued to ask is, as you talk about the high percentage of eyes that are on this right now, we understand that Texans were really affected by what was happening in the Kerr County floods during 4th of July. And the choices that Republican leaders are making, but also the choices that the Democratic Party and leaders here in Texas made to flee the state when we really do have some crucial and high priority agenda topics such as the flooding. Do you think that that is going to backfire on the Texas Democratic Party?
I think Texans are going to know exactly who's to blame. And it's not just about who's been in charge for the last 30 years. This disaster was tragic. It touched all of us, and it was incredibly deadly. And I don't want to gloss over that in the slightest way. It has been so painful for so many of us. But Texas is not new to natural disasters. So if there is a lack of preparedness, if there is a lack of responsiveness, that's something that's very familiar to us in Harris County. There was no special session called after Harvey. The money got tied up in the GLO for years. Some people have still never seen the money that they needed to recover. And the fact remains that the governor over the last 10 years has used broad emergency executive powers to move over $900 million. One of the largest ticket items was taking money out of the prison system and transferring it to Operation Lone Star to the tune of over $350 million. So if there is somebody who is sitting on relief for these families, there's only one person to blame. The governor could have taken action on July 5th, and he has chosen not to. And he has chosen instead to prioritize a redistricting plan that's essentially written by billionaires who live in Virginia and D.C. That no Texan asked for. And we're prioritizing that so that politicians can pick their voters. To me, as an emergency room nurse, this process has been utterly baffling.
Let me ask a process question. I think I've asked it before of other lawmakers, possibly even you, but just to understand it yet again. Does the governor set the order of the agenda items in a special session, or does he just call it with these items and then each house decides how they want to proceed?
So the governor basically can just set the topics, and there is pretty broad legislative discretion for what that means. For instance, recently in the Senate, there was a discussion about whether we were meeting the requirements of the call because something was a bill and not actually a constitutional amendment. They do try to keep it broad so that legislators are still the ones driving the legislation, but the governor sets the topics. That being said, as an emergency room nurse, public health nurse, somebody who's got a background in, all kinds of different emergency response, that is bipartisan policy. We all know how important it is to have early warning systems to help people recover with some sort of direct aid, temporary housing, rebuilding even the riverbanks or low water crossings, that sort of thing. We can all get behind that. So when you mix in something that is as partisan as redistricting, or as unpopular as mid-decade redistricting designed by out-of-state, donors that will take away the rights of Texas voters, you set us up for disaster. So when this session comes and goes, and if there is no meaningful flood policy or flood relief, there's only going to be one person to blame, and it's going to be the Republican Party who's in charge of everything right now.
I know you are a senator, not a House member, but and just to wrap this one point up, then I want to go to a call that we've got coming in. But I'm curious, could the House have put the disaster relief first, knowing that the redistricting was going to be problematic? If they truly wanted to take care of this issue, they could have voted on that, and then everything that was going to happen would have happened. And so the fleeing of the Democrats, could they have structured it that way?
Such a great question. I'd say the short answer is yes. I'm not up to date on exactly the number of hearings, but I believe we've had maybe 14 or 15 on redistricting. We've had maybe 2 on flood relief. So it's just very clear where the priority and where the emphasis is. The vast majority of voters support the governor moving money as quickly as possible, actually over 80%. And the majority of Texans hate the idea of arresting their legislators, except that, that's also on the table. 62% oppose this redistricting to allow politicians to pick their voters, and actually only a minority of people even oppose the quorum break. So what I am just seeing is a very disconnected and out of touch leadership in our state right now.
And the person that's seeing that is State Senator Molly Cook of Houston. We invite you to join the conversation. It's 713-440-8870 if you have questions, comments, concerns, like Brian does from the Galleria. Brian, what's on your mind today?
Yes, hi, good morning. And I really liked your last question that you asked, Ernie, because it does seem that they constantly put things on the agenda in a backwards order that always ends up hurting the people more than anything, right? So if they could have done the emergency relief stuff first and then the redistricting, that would have been great. I hadn't even considered that until you brought that up. But why I'm calling is, I 100% agree with the senator or with the representative about the problem lies at the very top. Greg Abbott, he's been a terrible governor almost his whole entire time in office. He's done some things that I have liked, but for the most part, like 90% of it, you can't agree with that guy. He has one agenda, seems at a time, and he's not for the working people of Texas. But I do agree that, well, I have a question, I guess, but I think I already know the answer. Is redistricting halfway through the decade, is it illegal? And I know it's not common practice, but is it illegal? I think the answer is no. And so I've heard a lot in the media over the last couple of weeks as this has progressed that the Republicans are cheating and they're breaking the rules and this and that. They are not. They are doing the same thing that the Democrats do every once in a while, which is play the game to their advantage. Nobody likes it, but it's not against the rules. They are playing within the constructs of the game, and it is not to everybody's benefit.
Brian, I'm going to pause you. I'm going to pause you right there so I can. Yeah, I know you're still going, Brian. I'm cutting you off right there because I think we got the bulk of it, and I want to give the senator a chance to respond. So thank you, Brian, and it's a great question.
Okay, and Brian and I need to get coffee sometime, but the main question was, is this illegal? And that's such a good question. In my opinion, and in the opinion of a lot of folks around this state, the reason that what they're doing is illegal is that it is going to disenfranchise Black and brown voters, fly in the face of our Constitution, and fly in the face of the Voting Rights Act. The only way to get new or more Republican representation out of a state that is already overly represented by Republicans is to take away the voting power of Black and brown voters. That's it. So that's the part that is illegal and that you will absolutely see challenged in court if this goes through. The second point, I'm so happy Brian mentioned it, is the both sides do this argument. And I hear what you're saying. In some states, it may seem like there's, disproportionate Democratic representation, even though there are Republicans in that state. My answer to that is, this is my first elected gig, and I'd like us both to say we want an independent redistricting commission. There is overwhelming bipartisan support for this. Only Democrats have filed that bill in the Texas legislature, and I believe there are several legislators on the federal level who have also filed this bill. That is what the people of Texas need, is for our legislators to be focused on serving the people and being able to be in our districts and take care of our people. But we deserve an independent redistricting commission, and that's something that we should all get behind. The last thing I'll say is, in the state of Texas, to my knowledge, in recent history, there has been no mid-decade Democratic redistricting, no mid-decade redistricting done under a Democratic administration. It was Tom DeLay in 2003, and this time it's Governor Abbott at the behest of some people pulling the strings of President Trump, some who knows who they are, out-of-state folks. And so I'm with you. And we should absolutely all be rising up and saying, stop the madness, flood relief, and that's it for this session. And then let's have an independent redistricting commission that takes care of this in the future.
I did cut off Brian, and he did want to get to one more point, and I want to let him have a chance to that. His other comment was, if he didn't go to work, he would get fired. How come it's not the same for our legislators?
Nobody in this state is working harder than our Democratic House colleagues who are breaking quorum right now. Nobody. They are doing the work. They are holding the line and saying this should not be what we're focusing on. The governor ought to be moving money right now to meet the needs of the people of Texas, just like he's willing to do for his other pet projects. We passed a budget. We showed up and we did our jobs in the regular session. We were told that this special session would be about correcting issues around THC. When the floods happened, we didn't move the date up. He kept the same date. It was, 17 days after the floods that we even came back together. And there was an 18-item agenda that were just things that the people of Texas and their elected representatives didn't want to pass during the regular session. So when we talk about folks doing their jobs, I would say the person most not doing their job right now is the governor of Texas. And the people who are doing their jobs are House Democratic colleagues who are risking everything because their people want them to. And again, we're seeing in statewide polling that a very small minority of folks actually oppose the quorum break. People understand what's on the line and how dysfunctional this all is.
And I want to thank Brian again for both those questions that were really great questions. And thank you for calling. Sorry I had to cut you off.
You're listening to Hello Houston, and we are speaking with State Senator Molly Cook of Houston. We do have a call on the line. Sherry from the Galleria. Sherry, what is your comment or question for Senator Cook?
My question would be, we're all tired of that bully in the governor's office spending our money on wasteful things. The Democratic representatives are doing a good job, and they shouldn't be gerrymandered into taking our votes away. Everybody deserves representation, and this is wrong what they're doing, and they're just wasting our tax dollars.
Thank you for your call, Sherry. Senator Cook?
I think that's really, really poignant. And honestly, I'm almost brought to tears by what I can hear in your voice. And I feel the same way. I'm going to clock back into my emergency department and meet with Texas children who do not have health insurance. I'm going to meet with pregnant Texans who have no access to prenatal care. And I'm going to meet with homeless Texans who have been facing issue after issue after issue that led them to that point, that led to their eviction and their homelessness, that can't get back on their feet. And instead, the governor has promised to call special session after special session after special session, which wastes our money, wastes our time, and he refused to prioritize what's most important to Texans in the first place. So I just want to say I'm with you. Thank you for your call, Sherry.
Senator Cook, respectfully, though, you could say that Governor Abbott is saying he is going to continue to move the redistricting maps forward. So in some ways, people might be looking to the Democratic lawmakers saying, you all are actually causing the bottleneck here. You all are stopping essentially important business that affects all of Texans, not just this area or the redistricting areas. Y'all are essentially causing the stop on moving legislative policy forward.
I could entertain that. I really could if I were seeing any sort of effort or real plan coming out of leadership. Again, how many flood hearings have we had? And what does the policy that's coming out of that look like? As somebody who has spent significant amount of time in emergency preparedness, emergency education, what needs to happen right now is relief money. And that could happen with or without the legislature. The LBB and the governor are making that choice right now, not to move money for the people of Texas who are hurting the most. What then would need to happen, because we don't have it already, is a real statewide disaster preparedness plan. And that will take time, and it will take investment, and it will take infrastructure dollars. But we deserve it, and we need it, and it's frankly way past time. Mm-hmm. So if I really thought the Democrats were holding up what the people of Texas need, I would be on the phone calling them and telling them to come home.
Yeah.
But what is happening right now is that the governor is sitting on the flood relief money that the people of Texas deserve. And the Democrats are holding the line and saying, we are not going to stand for a mid-decade redistricting that is wildly unpopular with the public, did not come from Texans, and is seriously, truly coming from like some random in Virginia or some unknown billionaire donors that we can't even find if we try and look them up. So I stand with my Democratic colleagues and I stand with the people of Texas and saying, we deserve better.
Let me ask this really quickly, then I want to grab a couple more calls if we can. It's that if this redistricting map, and the Republicans seem to have the numbers in the legislature, and it's going to be a done deal, it's going to go through, that this is a stalling and we're getting attention and other people are reacting to it, but at the end of the day, this map is going to go through. Doing this walkout is just holding off the inevitable at the risk, at the cost of moving on to the other topics that were on the agenda. And that in some ways, at the end of the day, it could backfire and look bad on the Democrats, that it was like, you did all this, you wasted all this time, this map went through anyway, and now we didn't get our relief funding we needed here and there. How do you react to that?
Again, the relief funding does not need legislative action right now, and that should have already moved. That should have already moved. That should have been a July 5th request coming from the governor's office in conversation with the LBB. Again, $360 million for Operation Lone Star, but where is the money for the people of Texas? So, and then I think what's really important to keep in mind is that's the first step, is the relief money. What comes after that is a big statewide planning process. If you've seen the other 18 items on this call, it's a bunch of stuff that didn't get passed during the regular session because it wasn't going to pass during the regular session. These are not top priorities for Texans. This isn't stuff that addresses your cost of living or insurance costs or grocery costs or housing costs, transportation costs, all the things that everyone is telling us over and over and over again they want us to focus on. It's not that. It's pet partisan issues that weren't popular enough to move during our regular democratic process. And the governor is willing to hold flood relief back in order to try and force people to come work on unpopular issues. If you're serious about disaster preparedness and flood recovery, you'd put it by yourself. You'd focus on it. And then you can move on to your other partisan things if you want to, but it's disrespectful to the people of Texas, and Democrats are doing their jobs.
You are listening to Hello Houston. We are speaking with State Senator Molly Cook of Houston. Justin from downtown has a question for Senator Cook. Welcome to Hello Houston, Justin.
Hi, thank you. I was just calling to see, well, first, I want to say thank you for Senator Cook for taking the time to come on air. But second, I just wanted to see what her response would be to voters that are already feeling tired and worn out, who already feel disenfranchised and their voice isn't heard, especially since, as we just mentioned a couple of minutes ago, Governor Abbott says that he will keep calling special sessions. What more is there that we can do other than just calling, sending letters, showing up to protests and public events?
That's a really strong list of tactics. Let me start there. And so I encourage everybody to be doing that. I think what the message maybe we should be sending to our leadership is of course, a hard ask. Move the money right now. Move the money with or without the legislature in session. Take care of the people of Texas. The second thing, and this goes back a little bit to your previous question, is what we are about to ignite is an arms race across the U.S. that is going to hurt the people. That's it. I know every state already has some, level of gerrymandering. We can go back and forth about this. Again, I support an independent redistricting commission here in Texas or nationwide. But what we need to send the message to our governor is stop this. Don't do it. We do not want California to redistrict in a way that also takes away the voice of voters. We don't want New York to do this. We want every voter in the entire United States to have their voice and their place in the political process. And right now, it is the choice of Texas leadership, whether we like that uncontrollable wildfire or not. And so just as much as you can be doing, I know it's frustrating. I know that you're tired, but keep it up and keep it up. And your House colleagues are with you. We're with you. And the important thing to keep in mind is they can't redistrict a state line. State lines are fixed. And every single Texan does have one voice, one vote for our next state elections. And I suspect that Republicans may end up paying for this. They've really shown their cards and where their priorities lie, and it certainly isn't with the working people of Texas. So just stay strong and get ready for the next election.
And to jump on the end of that, remember, no matter where you stand on these issues, vote. That is where you still have your power. Make sure you always vote. We're wrapping up right now with State Senator Molly Cook. Before we go, one last question. Seth is on the line. Seth, what's on your mind?
Hey, thanks so much for taking my call. I know there's a lot of discussion about the legality of this redistricting, and it's really coming down to the implicit discrimination aspect of it, whether it's effectively discriminatory. My question to the senator is there not a legal sort of like a court injunction that can be pursued to assess and address this question of legality implicitly, especially so that the vote as whole move forward from there?
Senator, that's a fantastic question. Yeah. So basically, what has happened, and let me start by saying the maps were already overrepresentative of white people in Texas. We are a majority minority state, but we do not see a majority of the districts giving voice to minority voters. And so we're already starting from behind home plate. Lots of lawsuits in the past over our maps. So the reason that it's illegal is because it is going to further disenfranchise Black and brown voters. We expect it to go to court as soon as something passes. And the courts will then have to review. That process will take place. There can be an injunction. Of course, those can get appealed. Ultimately, the Republicans in Texas, in most ways, are very, very, very powerful. And they can also do things like move election dates, like the primary election. So, when people ask, like, isn't this inevitable? What are we holding out for? Our House colleagues put everything on the line to give the public a second to breathe and think, and even wrap their minds around what is happening. We've got folks who are voting in CD18 in a special election. They're going to turn around and vote in a primary, and the lines are changing. It's chaotic, and it's not respectful to the voters and the people of Texas. So yes, you should expect to see a legal fight should something pass. But again, the ideal outcome is that this doesn't happen, because if it happens here, it's going to force the hand of every other state to do the same thing so that people can have a voice and say, we don't want Social Security, Medicare cut. We don't want public radio funding cut. We don't want public education cut. All the stuff that's important to us. So, but yeah, we'll see that legal battle.
We'll continue to cover this story and continue to talk with our lawmakers. We do invite Republicans to join us here as well. It may seem like we have a lot of Democrats on. We are inviting our Republican your Republican colleagues to join us and also discuss this topic.
That's right. And we did still have a lot of questions, Senator Cook. So we want to thank you today for taking the time to join us and help us continue to move our coverage forward. Again, State Senator Molly Cook of Houston.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Coming up on Hello Houston, we'll talk with Friends of Columbia's Taps, Ed Pettitt and Claudia Corletto, about a possible e-scooter ban in downtown Houston. This is News 88.7. With federal funding cuts, Houston Public Media has lost $2.2 million annually. In response, we have launched the Resiliency Fund, an urgent initiative to protect the programs and services you rely on. That includes PBS Kids, that provides free educational programming to children and families across Greater Houston. Your support of the Resiliency Fund helps keep this vital service accessible to our community. Give now at houstonpublicmedia.org/donate.
Today at 2 o'clock on News 88.7.
Support comes from the German Saturday School of Houston, providing instruction for children and adults at Bel Air United Methodist. Registration is open for the upcoming school year, beginning August 23rd. More at 713-569-0801. Support comes from Sunny Pro, a Houston-based business advisory firm providing consulting solutions, specializing in mergers, acquisitions, divestitures, and valuations for exit planning. Details at sunnypro.com or follow @SunnyPro LLC. Support comes from the Dan L. Duncan Comprehensive Cancer Center at Baylor St. Luke's Medical Center, offering comprehensive cancer care that is compassionate, personalized, and driven by clinical research. More at stlukeshealth.org/cancer. Support comes from the Eternal Gandhi Museum Houston, highlighting the power of nonviolent conflict resolution through examples of peace leaders worldwide. Now open. Field trips and group visits available. More at egmh.org. Support comes from Houston Theater Week, a citywide celebration of live performances. Participating organizations include theater, dance, and music presenters. Returning August 18th through 24th. Tickets at houstontheaterweek.com.
And now back to Hello Houston. To comment on today's topics, call or text 713-440-8870 or email us at talk@hellohouston.org. Now here's Celeste Díaz Schurman and Ernie Manouse.
In a recent City Council Quality of Life Committee meeting, officials revealed that e-scooter accidents went up from just 3 reported in 2021 to 21 in 2024, including 2 fatalities, with over half occurring downtown. Concerns have also been raised about sidewalk clutter, unregulated vendors, and nighttime misuse tied to violence, theft, and public disturbance. What now is emerging is a compromise. Rather than enforce a full-blown ban with downtown, midtown, and east downtown, the city is eyeballing a combination of targeted restrictions, such as designated no-ride zones, speed limits, geofencing, curfews, and strong vendor regulations to reduce risk while preserving access. But is this the right move? To discuss, we welcome Edward D. Pettitt II, the president of the Friends of Columbia TAP, vice president of Houston's Greater Third Ward Super Neighborhood Number 67, and a graduate research assistant at Texas Southern University's Bullard Center for Environment and Climate, Justice. Not criminal, just climate.
Some of them are criminal. That's another story.
Ed, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
The first thing, just to establish so people understand where you're coming from, is explain what Columbia TAP is so people know where we're talking about region-wise in that.
Sure. So the Columbia TAP is a rail trail. So it was formerly the Columbia TAP Railroad that stretched all the way from the town of Columbia in Brazoria County and then onwards to the port of Galveston. Now it's a 4-mile hike and bike trail, the section that goes through east downtown Houston. And actually half of it, the half north of the Gulf Freeway, is part of this proposed scooter ban.
So you pro or con the scooter ban?
I have been renting and ride-sharing scooters for about a decade. And I've owned my own personal scooter for about 3 years, and I use it for all of my daily commuting, including to get here today. So I am pro-scooters, anti-ban.
But, it sounds like you're a very responsible, citizen, Houstonian that rides his scooter and follows the rules. I personally have been downtown sometimes on a Saturday night, and scooters will just be flying by me. How can you enforce, safety when it comes to scooters? Because as we see, there has been an uptick in issues with them.
Yeah, and I ride downtown sometimes at night as well, and I've seen some of the reckless driving. And it's not just scooters, it's trikes, it's one-wheelers. It's not the mode that's the problem. It's the lack of enforcement. It reminds me of a Simpsons episode where Ned Flanders has a flashback to his doped out hippie parents, and they go, "Hey, Doc, we've tried nothing and we're all out of ideas." That's the approach of City Hall. They've tried nothing to actually regulate scooters, and now they just want to do a full ban because they have some folks at One Park Place complaining. No. There's ways to enforce it, and other cities have been successful. I have done rideshare and scooter share in Atlanta. They have the Atlanta Beltline, just like the Columbia Tap, a former railroad, now a trail. When you use their rental scooters, they have geofencing. So it knows exactly when you go from the street to the trail, it'll lower your speed. And after a certain hour, like 9 at night, then the scooters don't go at all. So you can do curfews, you can do geofencing, you can prevent them from going to sidewalks or being parked in random places. There's technology that you can use to regulate these scooters.
And so who would be the one providing that technology for the scooters?
So there's 3 kind of use cases of scooters that I see. You have scooter share, which Houston has never had. In fact, we don't even have bike share anymore, and that's another story. I think we should bring in a vendor who can do both bike share and scooter share, and they can use geofencing to make sure that they're not being left out in the wrong places or that they're moderating the speed through speed governors on the scooters. When it comes to recreational scooter rentals, I do believe that some of our larger vendors in Houston, like E-Ride, have that capability to enforce different rules around curfews and geofencing and speed. I think that we should not push our small vendors out of Houston because that's a small business. And I think there's ways to regulate them. Some of these scooter shops, they have brick and mortars. They have permits to run their business. They're not just popping up in vans on the street. So we should encourage the ones that are trying to follow the law. And then the third use case is folks like me that have their private scooters. And I think that we shouldn't have curfews. Some of us work night shifts. Some of us have to go to get the groceries early in the morning. We shouldn't be penalized because there's folks misusing scooters in a certain 3-block area of downtown.
Mm-hmm. 2 things. Well, first thing is something you said that's sticking with me is we're not enforcing the laws we have. Often the problems that I see with scooters are they fly through red lights, they're going too fast and all that. We have laws that say you have to stop at a light regardless of what you're on. If they're going through that, that's what the problem is. Is that what you're
we definitely do. And actually, so this past couple weeks when the city announced their scooter task force and the HPD has been out there more at Discovery Green, things have calmed down quite a bit. They just released an op-ed today where the Houston Chronicle opinion videographer Sharon Steinman went out the past couple nights, and she saw young people enjoying them and more or less following the law. Some of them were still getting into Discovery Green, but you had the police cars parked out there, so things were a lot calmer. The reason that things have been so crazy, and actually, I agreed with Catherine Lott unexpectedly when she gave her comments at Public City Hall. She's the president and park director for Discovery Green. She actually said scooters aren't the problem. Lawlessness is the problem. And it's because we have abandoned our urban core. For so many years, people drive home after work, and downtown is just an empty ghost town at night. Mm-hmm. Now folks are actually coming into downtown. There's recreation. There's options for things to do. We need to have police out there, not just in their squad cars. We need to have them on foot. We need to have them on bikes, maybe even scooters themselves. When I go to New York or New Orleans or even Dallas, I see police out on foot and bicycle in downtown at night. And we need that in Houston to prevent the lawlessness.
I want to remind everyone we're speaking with Ed Pettitt. We're about Houston and e-scooters. If you'd like to join the conversation, give us a call or text 713-440-8870. The other thing I wanted to bring up, my partner works in orthopedic imaging. Mm-hmm. He is extremely concerned about these e-scooters, the number of injuries he sees with people coming in. And once again, it's recklessness, and they're getting in accidents, they're getting hurt. It's astronomical, he said, in the growth of the number of these as we see more of these scooters out there. Are they inherently dangerous?
So I have a couple things to say about that. Just this year, there's been a peer-reviewed study from Rutgers University that found that 85% of scooter injuries are minor, not requiring hospitalization. That is,
what percentage did you say?
85% are considered minor. That is a safer track record than even bicycles, than injuries by bicycles and e-bikes. So we might be seeing more injuries because they're getting more popular. And you quoted that statistic that we went from 3 to 21. And actually, it was funny because on their PowerPoint, they said 600%. This is like thousands of casualties, right? No, it's 3 to 21. Well, in that time period, how many additional rides have there been? How many folks have switched from cars to using scooters, or switched from being out at bars or car meets and gone to scooters? And what kind of injuries were those? So that study found that scooters are actually safer than bikes when you look at the kinds of injuries folks are having.
So you're saying then the increase in numbers that they may be seeing in emergency rooms are because usage is going up, where bike, if you say compare it to bikes, well, there's so many saturation of bike already, that's not really changing, but we're seeing the saturation of scooters change.
Exactly. And we should be talking about cars as well. If you look at fatalities per 100,000 residents, New York and San Francisco are about 4 fatalities per 100,000 people when it comes to cars. Houston is 12.9. So just imagine, Houston is over 3 times more deadly for vehicular fatalities. And you don't see that many people out on the street at night in Houston as you do in New York City, but we have 3 times the fatality. Our cars are the problem.
Right, and that's because we also commute a lot more than New York City, right? Talk to us a little bit about what your consensus is and what is the support behind this, because it sounds like there's a lot of opposition.
There's a lot of opposition because we are trying to, instead of regulating the harms, we're just banning things that a group of people in downtown don't like, right? And it's funny that the mayor called the scooter riders out-of-towners. When the Houston opinion editor went out and did her research, all the young people she was talking to were from Houston and the greater Houston area. And it's actually the folks at Houston First that are complaining that it's their tourists that are having the problem with the scooters. Tourists, by definition, are out-of-towners. So why are we preferencing that sector of folks over our own residents that are using scooters to commute, that are having it as a way of recreation, when they could be having much more dangerous forms of recreation? So I think there is a growing awareness that the city is avoiding responsibility and just trying to go for the easy way out, which is a ban.
I live downtown, right in the area there, and I see these scooters. And and it's just totally my observation of it, it's young folks getting together in mass, flying through the neighborhood on these scooters. Yes, it looks like it's lack of responsibility, lack of training, lack of paying attention to street laws and all of that. But what do you do to stop that from happening if you don't say you can't ride in this area? It's not like you can legalize intelligence. It's not like you can legalize them to, no, don't be in this large a group. Don't go through, unless you have just police arresting them all. So I don't understand a fix to a problem we're seeing growing in that regard.
I think if you had actual community policing where cops are out there on foot in downtown, around Discovery Green, just like you have in every other major city in the U.S., that will be a deterrent. You'll start to see the recklessness and lawlessness abate. And we just haven't, like I said, we haven't tried anything, and we're all out of ideas. We should try actual community policing. We had some police officers come to one of our community meetings in 3rd Ward, and we said, how do you enforce the scooters? Because I, until recently, never saw cops stopping these folks downtown. I would see them drive by and just keep going. And they're like, well, we're told that we should flash our lights if we see it. And I'm like, and not get out of your squad car?
But could it be lack of resources, lack of officers, lack of ability to do that? Who's going to pay for more officers to be able to be? In some ways, does it make sense?
The police are the largest portion of our budget. They have a $1.3 billion budget. I think we should be able to have some cops out on a beat in our downtown urban core like every other city does.
Well, I don't think necessarily that's the issue that Ernie's trying to say, but a question for you. When you talk about these scooter riding and whether they're commuters or they're coming in and they're on the street or are they on the sidewalk?
So right now, scooters should be on the street. Actually, it'd be ideal if they had shared use paths. Right now, we only have 4 bike paths in downtown: Polk Street, Lamar, and Bagby, and Austin. All right. The mayor's already ripped up half of Austin. They're threatening to close Polk completely. And so we don't have safe routes for these folks who are multimodal to share the street with cars. So yeah, they're going to weave back and forth.
Share the street or share the sidewalk with pedestrians?
No, I think we need to have shared use paths for them. So they shouldn't be riding down the sidewalks, and then when they're in the car lanes, the cars don't believe that they should be in there. The cars don't believe cyclists should be in their lane, even though by law they have a right to be in there. Right. So it's a whole culture that we have in Houston where pedestrians think that nothing else should be on the sidewalk. Vehicles think nothing should be in the road. And so it's our cyclists and our scooters that are bearing the brunt of that tragedy. When we did Vision Zero, we mapped out the 6% of city streets that had 60% of the fatalities. Most of those are in downtown. So when you reduce options for them to be in protected paths, you're pushing the cyclists and the scooters into those 6% of streets that have 60% of the fatalities.
Am I safe in assuming that the issue is it's the recreational users that are maybe causing the issue and the problems and the concerns that everyone's looking at, that regular commuters and folks are using it more responsibly, they're doing what they should be doing, and that is there any way to legislate when it comes to the recreational user as the professional, I guess, user?
I think it is a certain subset of the recreational users. And yes, there's plenty of ways to regulate it. Other cities are successfully regulating it. You can have the geofencing and the speed governors, just like you have in Atlanta and Washington, D.C. I mean, Washington, D.C. is so strict. Like, it knows within a couple inches of where you're parking your scooter. It won't let you park your scooter in blocking the sidewalks in D.C. or in Atlanta or in New Orleans. Like, they have those rules. And, you said I misunderstood him earlier. When you're talking about the difficulty of enforcement and resources, how easy do you think it is to enforce a ban? City called out Toronto as their model of a ban. In Toronto, the ban's not working. If you look at the articles that have come out, they said that scooters are up because of the gas prices. So they're not able to enforce that ban in Toronto.
Mm-hmm. And we did get a couple of texts that I want to read. We received one text. Like snowboarding versus skiing, lawlessness, as he said, stand on a corner in Houston at a busy intersection during rush hour. So much lawlessness in driving too. We also had one other text that said, this is Jen in Clear Lake. If they intend on banning vehicles due to bad driving and accidents, they really need to ban trucks. Trucks, especially black trucks that have those extra wheels, are the vehicles that I have seen driving unsafely and most often.
The Truth also commented on YouTube, cyclists and scooters have a right to the road just like motorists. Unfortunately, most Texas drivers don't understand that.
There you go.
Thank you for coming in and talking with
Edward
us about this
D.
today.
Pettitt II is the president of Friends of Columbia Tap. Edward, thanks again. Yeah,
thank you
for joining us. Coming up, we'll discuss a study that examines alcohol and drug consumption amongst HISD students. Stay with us as Hello Houston continues.
Federal funding for public media has been cut. In response, we're creating Houston Public Media's Resiliency Fund. Donations made toward the fund will directly counter the loss of the $2.2 million in federal funds that were cut annually and strengthen our station's foundation to provide our services into the future. Contributing to this fund is easy and quick and makes all the difference to our station. Help build the Resiliency Fund now at houstonpublicmedia.org/donate.
Comes from Moody Mansion, the restored 28,000 square foot mansion on Galveston's Broadway, furnished with original items and decor from the early 1900s. Open daily for tours. More at moodymansion.org. Support for Houston Public Media comes from listeners like you and from Baylor College of Medicine. Through research and innovation, Baylor continues to redefine what's possible in healthcare and medical discovery.
And now back to Hello Houston. To comment on today's topics, call or text 713-440-8870 or email us at talk@hellohouston.org. Now here's Celeste Díaz Schurman and Ernie Manouse.
Recent data shows that while alcohol use among HISD students has declined, there's still concern around the use of illicit drugs. A study from Rice University's Baker Institute for Public Policy found that nicotine vaping, methamphetamines, and opioid use have increased among HISD high school students. Joining us now to tell us more is one of the study's authors, Catherine Neal Harris, the Alfred C. Glassell Third Fellow in Drug Policy at Rice University's Baker Institute. Catherine, welcome to Hello Houston.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Thank you. And if folks want to join into the conversation, they can call or text us at 713-440-8870. I guess I want to start kind of a little backwards on this. What do you think has led to the decrease in alcohol use?
Yeah, so the decrease in alcohol use is really an interesting phenomenon, and it's not limited just to Houston. It's something that we're seeing really all over the Western world. There's been a decrease, long-term decrease in the use of alcohol among young adults. And there's a lot of speculation as to why this might be. Some of the reasons kind of boil down to the delayed onset of engagement in adult activities, right? So for example, young people might be starting to drive later. They might spend more time at home, and all of these other kinds of activities that would typically also involve alcohol use, they're just not engaging in, or they're engaging in it at a later age, right? So not in high school as, previous generations might have done. That's one aspect of it. Another is that, we're starting to see perhaps some changing cultural norms around alcohol use, where there's less peer pressure around using, there's greater awareness of the health risks. And also, we've seen this sort of general emphasis, right, on health and wellness. And, if you're going to be very healthy and take care of your body, alcohol isn't necessarily the best way to do that.
Okay, but if you take that and that information and then you shift it to what your study is finding, I'm kind of baffled again. If we're stepping back from alcohol to live a healthier life, so we take methamphetamines or we are vaping so explain that.
Yeah, well, so just one thing to keep in mind is the difference in the use rates, right? So we have seen a decline in alcohol use, but still, you still have, among HISD students, you still have roughly 20% that say that they've consumed alcohol in the past 30 days. If you compare that, for example, with the opioid use, you've had about 18% of HISD students who said that they have tried it. So in just, keeping the context there in terms of the numbers that we're seeing, alcohol is by far the most used intoxicating substance in the U.S., right? So we're seeing those numbers decrease, but there still are more users of that substance than any other substance.
And this paper focused on high school students that were enrolled at HISD. How does it compare to other school districts? I mean, HISD is a huge school district. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so the survey, the YRBS, the Youth Risk Behavior Survey, it's a national survey, and they have, districts that they use for that data. And so we're fortunate in the sense that HISD is one of those. We don't have that district-specific data for other area schools, right? So for example, we don't have like Katy ISD or Sheldon ISD. But when you look, what we did for our study was we compared the averages for HISD with the national averages. And when we did that, we saw that some of the rates were roughly comparable. Alcohol use was lower in HISD compared to the national average. Some of the stuff around smoking was pretty similar. What we did see was in HISD versus the national sample, higher rates of having ever used prescription opioids, methamphetamines, inhalants, substances like that.
Two quick things here. Very fast. I'm curious, the overlap between those who are using alcohol and those who are using these other substances, are they the same group?
Yeah, so it's a little bit difficult to say based on the way that we have access to the survey data. Because it's dealing with youth, some of that more disaggregated data is protected. So we have these kind of general overall numbers. Okay. Looking at general patterns of substance use, though, we do know that there is quite a bit of overlap among students who use alcohol and use other substances. Although, of course, if we look at the numbers, there are a lot of students that use alcohol or maybe use marijuana or even cigarettes who are not using opioids or meth or cocaine.
In the past, I just always remember the concept that people take this as escapism, kids that are doing these kind of things, but I'm thinking back to the days just alcohol. Things are bad at home, they're doing this. In the study, are kids using these substances as escape, or is it the fun and thrill and the partying atmosphere? What are we seeing in the study?
Yeah, so again, the data doesn't necessarily, they don't ask students about why they try a substance, right? We do, though, there's a separate part of the survey, and we actually have another report on that on mental health trends. And we know that there's a whole lot of correlation between, mental illness and substance use. And so I think it's certainly possible that there are a great number of kids, especially those who might be using substances more regularly, who might be doing it as a form of escape. Mm-hmm. I think the other thing to keep in mind, though, is that, a lot of young people, use adolescence as a time for experimentation.
Right.
And so if students have, access to these things either at home or their neighborhood or through their friends, maybe, they're not necessarily trying to escape anything, but they just want to see what it's like. And the unfortunate thing is that we do have an illicit drug supply now that is so much more dangerous because of fentanyl. Mm-hmm. And so that sort of youthful experimentation has become a lot riskier than it was 20 years ago. Mm-hmm. And so that messaging, I think, is something that the school district and, just generally we need to work on with adolescents.
Catherine Neal Harris is the Alfred C. Glassell III Fellow in Drug Policy at Rice University's Baker Institute for Public Policy. Catherine, thank you for joining us today on Hello Houston.
Thank you so much for having me. Take care.
Thank you.
And that brings us to the end of our show. We want to thank you for listening, calling, texting, and chatting with us today on Hello Houston. We will be back tomorrow with more conversations. This is News 88.7.
Thanks for listening to Hello Houston. Join us every Monday through Friday from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. to talk all things Houston. The Hello Houston production team includes Garrett Bowman, William Menjivar, Jen Altide, Todd Holslander, and Jim Kovacic. For the latest in local news, subscribe to the Hello Houston daily newsletter at HoustonPublicMedia.org. Hello Houston is a production of Houston Public Media. The opinions expressed by the guests of this program are solely their own and do not represent the views of management, staff, or underwriters of Houston Public Media. This is News 88.7.
Support comes from Houston Theater Week, a citywide celebration of live performances. Participating organizations include theater, dance, and music presenters. Returning August 18th through 24th. Tickets at HoustonTheaterWeek.com.
Your NPR station, KUHF Houston, a service of the University